Hey, back to my program. I want to talk a little bit about political correctness. I feel myself as an independent, middle of the road, and want to be left alone. And I also understand a call for things that to changing world. We're in a different time. There are different priorities. There are certain elements of history involving a cross section, whether African American, Hispanic, whatever it is, and we need to bring about change. I'm flexible and want to bring about some change. I'm political correctness taking place in this country in terms of our effort to wipe out all symbols. I taught his universities like LSU and Orleans. I was a Secretary of State. I was the keeper of the archive history of Louisiana. And those the Louisiana Purchase of the seven New Orleans, the New Orleans. A lot of great events happened down this part of the woods that affected our country. So I'm very history oriented, and we have honored those who have represented this state and this country, and in others we have not. But there is such a political correct concern today that we want to often wipe out any semblance of the past. You know, you learn from the past. History is prologue. You learn from what happened in the past. And the idea of what was in the minds of those who took the history, whether it be economic development 100 years ago, does not apply today. So if that's the case, you wipe out all semblance of remembrance. We've seen all over the country what's happened in some instances. I would agree, for example, at the House and whether the state capitol in South Carolina, that probably the Confederate flag should no longer be flown there. Ole Mississippi is taking it down. Ole Miss, the state of Mississippi. But what about the statues to those served in the Civil War? Do you wipe out all that semblance of history? General Lee, made for to be the head of the Union Army, probably the most respected general. If you wipe out any semblance of Robert E. Lee, who by all accounts was a very distinguished, honorable guy, taught a number of huge flicks when it came to the Civil War. States he chose to, and now there's a call to wipe out the statutes of Robert E. Lee or any semblance of that history. If you get into it, we can get into, I think, first seven in this all were slave owners. So you change the name, do you wipe out Jefferson, the Jefferson Monument, Jefferson names all over the country. Wipe those out because he was a slave owner. You can, how far do you go? I guess is the question. Two things that happened in recent weeks. Down in New Orleans, in my neck of the woods, they're trying to wipe out any Civil War statute. Robert E. Lee, General Beauregard, a cross section of other generals, Jefferson Davis, the first president of the Confederacy, and just put them aside. Tear down the monuments. Let's bring in someone new. Let's get a musician from New Orleans or something like that. Well, again, you learn from history. It's a teaching moment. I think that's wrong. I disagree. The most recent event I've seen is that Princeton University wants to wipe out any reference to their president of 8 years, Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson was president of the United States. Now, he came along when this country was still segregated, made no effort to wipe out that segregation, and many students at Princeton and even the president of Princeton are seriously considering wiping out Woodrow Wilson's name off of statutes and off on bills and making him a non-entity when it came to that university. The university which he was president of for 8 years. He was president, slave of home, as were the first 7 presidents, or is it worse to be someone like Woodrow Wilson, who was not proactive in wiping out segregation in this country? You see the situation you get yourself into and balancing all this out. And everybody looks to Lincoln. And I've studied Abraham back at that time. A couple of his quotes from his works, works of Abraham Lincoln. Let us be brought to believe it is morally right and favorable in our interest to transfer the Africans to his native climate. He says the place I'm thinking about is possibly Central America, somewhere near Liberia. Lincoln can call for slaves, all slaves getting out of the country. He's a great American. I don't understand that. Lincoln again. Free black slaves and make them politically and socially our equals. My own feeling will not admit of this. We can never make them our equals. This is Collected Works of Abraham Lincoln. Another quote, I am not nor ever have been in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of the white and the black races. I am not ever in favor of making voters or jurors of Negroes, nor qualify them to hold public office, nor to intermarry with white people. That is Abraham Lincoln, that we, so many people say is the greatest president we ever had in America, someone who is memorialized in so many ways. Lincoln's name is, he's okay in putting the African-American community in that void. Woodrow Wilson is not. Look, you can find thousands of examples of this. I say we learn from history, move on. We don't want to operate today like we did 100 years ago. We don't want to operate today like we did 10 years ago. But there's a balance in terms of what is supposedly political correctness that I think goes too far. I'm a moderate. I want to be in a moderate position in terms of making this country great. But going ahead and wiping out any sense of history that is not socially acceptable to you or to anyone else, I think is a big mistake. I'll be right back.